Good afternoon. This is the Panic Consulting ArcGIS workshop, and I'm Frank Conkling. Today, we're going to go and look at the parcel fabric, the ArcGIS parcel fabric, and we're going to open it up to some questions. As always, I want to start and just remind you that we are here to go and help you with your projects as you're coming through. If you want to be able to go and look at what's coming up, we have an event calendar that you can look at and check out and see, if there's anything. I don't have anything in April yet, but you can look at that. You also could go to our workshops and events page, and on that, you'll be able to go and see that in a linear fashion and look at all past meetings on here. I also will invite you to go to and check out our YouTube channel, where we go and take copies of everything that we record here and put it up there and share it with you. You can see some of these are actually, they get pretty popular. There will be 90 views, and we've actually got one that has over 3,000 views on it now. But it's a good way to go and share what's going on here. And so hopefully we'll get to that point. But today we're going to just sort of open it up to questions. And I've got two questions that some of my clients, and these were the main reasons why we actually started this, was the first question is, I have data that's not in the fabric right now. What do I need to think about? What do I need to be aware of as I'm moving it into ArcGIS Pro, and then as I'm moving it into the parcel fabric? What are the areas that I just need to be aware of to help me with? And there's really two main areas when you're first talking about migrating from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro. These areas deal with annotation, all right, whether or not you have annotation in your current ArcMap map document, and also whether or not you have COGO values that are stored anywhere. So let's start with annotation. Annotation is problematic in that there is a completely different structure between ArcMap annotation and ArcGIS Pro annotation. Esri has taken a look at the annotation and recognized there were ways to improve it. So they've actually gone and added some additional attribution specific for annotation. And because it is a different structure, you have to go and upgrade your annotation to go and in order to be able to edit it inside of ArcGIS Pro. But because it has a completely different structure on it, that new structure cannot be read by ArcMap any longer, which means that that's the first decision you're going to make when you go to make your transition from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro. By the way, let me stop here and just remind you, we also, if you have any questions or any comments, you want to add them, go ahead and put them in the chat window. Chris is actually migrating, or he's moderating on this, and he will go and let me know if there's a question that he thinks needs to be answered, or a comment that is relevant here. So please put all your comments, questions in the chat window. And thank you, Chris, also for that. All right, so again, annotation. Annotation is problematic. Well, it's just something that you need to be aware of when you're migrating from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro. If you continue to use annotation, you're going to have to upgrade it. And if you upgrade it, your existing ArcMap users cannot utilize that annotation anymore. The further downside is that there really is no way to go and downgrade your annotation to get it back to the old ArcMap structure. Unfortunately, I have had some people go and offer some alternatives, and I'm going to be looking at them, and I'll report in the future whether they will work. But right now, there's no geoprocessing tool for that. Regarding the geoprocessing tool to go and upgrade your annotation, it really is nothing more than an upgrade data set here. And when you open up the upgrade data set, it will go and say, point to whatever you want to go and upgrade. And once you get in here, you go to your databases and you see your anno and you point to that anno and it will go and upgrade it itself. Be aware, it will do this upgrade in place, meaning it doesn't create a copy of it. It actually goes and changes the structure of what you point at. All right, again, here's a warning that the annotation feature class is upgraded in place. And if you wish to maintain or keep copies of your old, make sure you keep a copy of it. This is very important. All right. So other than that, if you go and just say upgrade data set, point at that annotation feature class and say run, it will automatically go and upgrade it for you, add the new structure in there, and you'll be able to go and not only read it, but you'll be able to edit it. So that's the first item you want to be aware of, that you're going to have to at least develop a strategy on when you're making the transition from map into pro. All right. The other one is interesting in that, let's see if I have any, do I have, this is a, let's go and look at this. This is a line feature class here that I have, and I can see the existing COGO fields in here. If I go and look at my data design and look at fields, which is how I actually can configure these, I will note that all of these are the old ArcMap COGO structure, all right, in which the COGO fields and the COGO values that are stored in there, the bearing, the distance, the radius, the delta angle, the tangent angle, the arc length, these are all text fields. They're stored as text because previously in ArcMap, most of these COGO values, they were not used for analysis. They were not used to go and really store anything other than the values that were going to be used for your map, something that you would look at. In ArcGIS Pro, a line feature class that has been enabled to have COGO on it actually has not text fields, but actually has number fields in here. Let me see if I can go and show you one. So this is an ArcGIS Pro feature class that has been enabled. And in here, you will see that the COGO fields are all double word numbers. They are true numbers now. So that's the second thing you want to be aware of. If you're making a transition from map into pro, those two items, above and beyond everything else, are the ones that you really want to look at. And you want to develop a strategy. How are you going to handle them? Well, we're lucky enough in that for COGO, Jason Camarado with Esri has actually developed a solution in here, and that Jason has developed a link which goes and allows you to go and modify, and let's see if we can get to this link here, It will allow you to go and take your existing ArcMap COGO fields, and it converts them over into ArcGIS Pro. And it goes and takes the text values and puts them into a line feature class with numeric values instead. So it calculates the differences, and it goes and adjusts them and moves them over. This actually works very well. I've actually used it several times when I've helped some of our clients migrate from Map into Pro with COGO. And if you look, this was originally created back in 2009, but Jason has gone and upgraded, and he does a great job with this. It's been downloaded a couple times. It's actually a nice tool. He's also gone and made some changes with it on here, but yeah, go ahead and download it and just look for ArcGIS Pro GP tools, or look for ArcMap COGO to ArcGIS Pro, and you'll be able to find that on Esri's site. So those two things, once you go and figure out how you're going to manage them going forward, it will help you at least make that transition. And I've said it before, the tools in Pro are so much better than they are in ArcMap. The speed with which you can go and edit things, the completeness with which you can go and edit things, how it works against multiple features and not just a single feature at a time. It gives you the ability to really edit and make changes very, very quickly. All right, so that's the first thing. That's just, okay, if you have existing feature classes, how do you bring them in? What are they going to look like? That sort of thing. Interestingly, if you go and have an ArcMap map document in your folder, you can usually just go and let me go and add a folder here and get over to this early one. I think we've got it here. Maybe not. I thought we had a map document here. If you have a map document here, you can just right click on it and say open, and it will go and bring that ArcMap map document into your current project file. All right, so it will easily go and open, and it does a great job of emulating, so you shouldn't be concerned about that. It does a really good job on it. All right, so then the next thing you want to talk about, the next thing you want to be concerned with, is recognition that inside ArcMap, it will go and hide and introduce vertices in your data. And what I've done is on here, I've taken this data and symbolized it so that I can actually visualize what vertices there are here, whether there's any issues that I want to look at or anything I need to address. There's also a tool to fix this, in that there is a there's a tool that allows you to go and do things like simplify. All right, simplify by straight lines and circular arcs. It goes and modifies this. It allows you to point, in which I can go and point this and say, go ahead and tell it what to fix. I can say, go ahead, this is miscellaneous, and I can add multiple lines in here, and it will go and allow me to do that, including polygons on here. And I'll put in an offset. I'll tell it how to fit it, whether to create circular curves, the minimum, the maximum, the minimum radius, maximum radius, endpoints on here. And it also will allow you to go and have editing turned on so that you can undo these if you want. I can share with you that this will work. This will work against multiple feature classes, but it is a batch process. And sometimes when we look at the data, we want to visually inspect it from a QC standpoint rather than just going and making that change. So instead of doing everything at one time, we'll look at this and we'll say, let's go and use a tool called Align Features. That Align Features tool will allow us to go and set a tolerance and then go and use and draw what we want that new path to be and allow us to go and align the features, not just what we've picked on or not what we've selected, but also anything that's editable and visible at that time. And when we do this, it will eliminate and clean up all of those curves for us. We do want to go and save that, by the way. So that's one of the other tools you want to look at is when you're making this transition from map into pro, what do I need to think about? You want to go and make sure that you've handled your Anno, your COGO. You look at vertices, clean up that data for the vertices. Make sure, by the way, that you have coincidence between these lines and not gaps and overlaps, especially between different layers. And again, we use the Align Features tools a lot for that. And with that, that gives you a great start towards moving into Pro and getting out of ArcMap. And then it's just a matter of really learning the tools and figuring out how to go and use them. But then I have another client who said, well, that's nice, but what happens if I'm in the ArcMap parcel fabric? What do I need to think about when I'm moving from ArcMap parcel fabric into the ArcGIS parcel fabric? And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. I'm actually waiting for this to display right now. So this is the ArcMap parcel fabric in here. And again, the first thing you always want to think about is your annotation. How are you going to handle your annotation as you move forward with this? You do have to go and upgrade it from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro. But if you're going to be doing multi-editor against published web services, which is what ArcGIS Parcel Fabric uses, you want to just be aware that Anno is very, very chatty. There's a lot of communication that goes back and forth, and annotation seems to be one of those things that slows people down. We're developing several alternatives for some of our clients to help them to understand how to go and migrate these and how to make it so that they can actually bring annotation values over. And again, there's lots of options on here. But more importantly, within that parcel fabric, all right, and I've got to get the old one in here. Within the parcel fabric, one of the things you really want to think about is the plan table. And when you bring the plan table in, you want to look at how many records have and use the map plan for it. Because moving into the ArcGIS parcel fabric, the upgrade script, the upgrade parcel fabric script, and let's bring this over here. If we go to toolboxes and parcel tools, there's an administration, and then there's upgrade ArcMap parcel fabric script. The advice usually is just go ahead and run this, but this makes an assumption you need to be aware of. It assumes that your current ArcMap parcel fabric plan table has a unique plan set for every one of your parcels, every one of your features that are stored in there. And that is rarely the case, rarely the case. So again, I'm going to go and use data engineering here for it to go and tell me that on this plan table, go ahead and add the stats and do it. I can see that in fact, for number one, there's only one with the map document. Let's go ahead and calculate the stats on here. I only have one in the table, but if I actually look at my parcels table, and I'm going to add that to here, and I'm going to go to data engineering on here, and I'm going to look at the plan ID and say, go ahead and calc this. It's going to tell me that here, that the distribution on here, and I can see that there are 30,000 unique values in here, but that's, where's my value here? I can look at the value of one and find there's an awful lot of them that have a value of just one on them. Open up the histogram further, and we can see that they probably have here, there's 144,000 polygons that have the single value of the map plan on here. This is one of the things you don't want to do, because when you bring it in to the new parcel fabric, every one of those polygons will all be dissolved into a single record, which is not very efficient, both from a spatial index standpoint and from just sort of an overall being able to go and upgrade that as you make new changes on here. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at that old ArcMap parcel fabric, whether or not you've got sufficient plans. It is a little tough to go and make unique plans for all of them. We've worked out a process for it, and we can help you make that transition, but you just want to be aware of that. Once you go and do that, you'll then wind up with a parcel fabric that has correct values in here. And once you work out your dimensions and what you're going to do with your anno, and you work out all of your records feature, you should be fairly good. So those are the questions that I came loaded with. These are the ones that I get asked most often. What do I have to think about when I'm going from ArcMap into ArcGIS Pro and into the parcel fabric? So then I'm going to open it up. Chris, do we have anything yet? Any questions, or let's just open it up? Does anybody here have any questions that we can go and use and answer when we're doing this?
We don't have any questions in the chat, but I'm wondering if you have a question, you just want to turn your mic on and ask. Now would be a good time, maybe.
Yep, thanks. So let's go in here, and this one was converted with still just that same on here. This was a early prototype just to go and demonstrate that the differences on there. So some of the questions that we have is, well, what are the advantages of getting it into the ArcGIS parcel fabric versus the ArcMap parcel fabric? And you saw one of them early on, which was the ability to go and correct for densified curves. And I'm trying to recall, this county actually has a lot of small little indentations that appear as densified curves, but they're not necessarily densified curves. They actually have some pretty good data here at this county. Here's one that we can see. This is one of the issues with the old parcel fabric, was that every single segmented line usually came in as its own separate line segment. So down in here, you would wind up with something like this for the natural boundaries. there was an option, but it was difficult to do, and it wasn't very intuitive in how you did it. But let's turn off some of these layers in here and show you that one of the things that we can do within this parcel fabric is we can actually go and take a line feature class, all right, and we can actually do a merge on it to go and take a single line and merge them so that, let me get down here, merge, and eliminate them and convert them from individual single lines into a polyline inside of here. Let's go to the edit tool. That's over there, definitely. So we can do this merge, and it will go and allow us to go and merge these lines into a single line. All right. And I can then go and remove this line from here. And these are all points. And I don't want to merge those points. I want to delete those points out of here. And you can see that I can still have a polyline defined as my boundary instead of just individual discrete lines, which greatly reduces the load and the amount of features that are stored in the database, not just on the geodatabase, but also as far as efficiency and display and that sort of thing. You have a lot less points in here, and it's much more efficient in what you're using. All right, anything else? Anybody that's in here? As
Nothing
far
in the
as
chat.
questions, nothing yet. All right. So let's look at this line here again. And let's see, again, eliminating densified curves, which are always problematic inside of here. Inside of the ArcGIS parcel fabric, there is a routine where if you don't correct them beforehand, you can come back later and fix them, and it's fairly easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to turn off my topology. I'm also going to go and do that align features tool. Again, I'm going to say 1. I'll put a tolerance in there as 5. The critical part for this is you want to make sure that you turn all historic elements on, because if you have something in here historically, it's going to go and maintain those vertices on the historic polygons, on the historic lines, together with the current ones. Got quite a bit in here. All right, here. All right. So I'm going to go and just realign these. And I'm going to assume that it goes from here to here. Wrong tool, Frank. There we go. The endpoint tool, I'll go from here to there and tell it to go and realign. And it goes and, again, it goes and drills down, and every vertex that's located within where we realigned, it will go and change the geometry on it. And then I'm going to go in and unselect everything else around here that I didn't just realign. So in this case, I'm going to have right-of-way line. I'm going to have, let's look and see what I actually have here. I have points. I have tax lines. I have conveyance division lines. I have simultaneous conversion lines. I have historic simultaneous conversion lines, simultaneous conveyance lines in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and delete those. And because we have a record which goes and represents what's on there, I can now go in here and tell it to go ahead and build, look at every record inside of this display and rebuild it so that it goes and gets rid of densified curves and creates just these straight lines in here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reselect all of that. And I'm going to go and initiate the update COGO routine on here. And I'm going to unselect some of these things that I know are not part of this. So I'm unselect that. I've got 3 lines there. I've got 3 lines there. And I've got 1 line for the conveyance division lines. And I'm going to tell it to recalculate all of that. So it recalculated the COGO values in here. Now, if I look at this, these COGO values that have been recalculated, they've all been marked that the values that are stored in here came from geometry. They were not entered, they were not computed, but they came from geometry. So I can actually go and say, if those values match the actual values that are stored in the documents, I can say that they were entered, or I can say they were computed. Right now, they're just saying that they're from geometry. And when I go and look at this and tell it to go and label these on here, it will go and let's make sure I turn those labels on. There they are. I will see that they have now been updated with labels and they have the new values all stored on them. They are not individual densified curves that are part of this. That's one of the advantages of it. The other advantage is if you have gaps or overlaps inside of here, there's some functionality where you can actually highlight. Let's go and identify that we want to highlight any gaps or overlaps in our tax parcels here and have it go and analyze this and say, okay, what fields do we have here? And it gives us a little line, a dotted line around the area that it evaluated and said, and shows us whether or not we have any gaps or overlaps within those polygons on here. Now, what's interesting is that this does not use the topology engine. By the way, we can turn this off and it makes it easier for us to identify. So I can go in here and see I actually have an overlap here between these two polygons. How do I fix that? I can go and use my line features tool again and just draw where this new line should be and click align. All right, and then when I go and highlight it again, that line, there's no longer a gap or an overlap involved in that. Another one of the advantages of moving into the ArcGIS parcel fabric. Let's wait for this to show up. There were a couple other things in here I saw. This is a fairly dense parcel fabric. As you can see, there's lots of things that it's going through here. This is another one down here. And you can see it right there. Just go ahead and just use this tool again. And let's say it should be there. Make sure that this is going to be inside that. And when I hit OK, it will go and align the features so that it will eliminate that gap and overlap. And when I tell it to go and check this again, it will show me that, in fact, it is taking care of that gap and overlap on there. All right. Another reason why you might consider this is that you see here, let's go, we've got some other things down here we want to turn off. That we've got, let's see if we can find this. Something that has some control point or some points that are dense and close to one another. So in here, it appears that this was some sort of a easement running through here. There might be some easements in here. If we turn these on, yeah, there we are. So those are still valid points in there. I guess I could have chosen a dirtier data set, but I didn't. Or something that has some issues with it that we can go in and access. No. There. Here's one in which there is a extra vertices located inside of here with a parcel fabric, and specifically with ArcGIS Pro 2.9 and above, there is a tool called Merge Points inside the parcel fabric, which allows us to go and select multiple points in here. Let's go and make sure that these points are turned on so we can select them. Allows us to pick multiple points, and it allows us to go and see in a preview where it's going to merge them all to. So in this case, let's go ahead and merge them so that this point, it merges into here. And we'll go and merge it and get rid of extra vertices in our data. All right. One of the things we want to be aware of is that it did not change on that because we took one that was quite a ways away. It did not change the COGO values that were stored on this line. Let's go ahead and just specifically locate that line and tell it to update the COGO values on there. And it updated that COGO values. Be very careful though. I just updated the PLSS lines on here. So you want to be very careful, very aware of what you have turned on and not turned on in here. All right. Do we have anyone that's willing to talk yet?
Not in the chat.
It doesn't look like it, does it? All right. Let me just demonstrate one more time. Again, this is one reason why we tend to move over to the parcel fabric. When we're dealing with parcels, we wind up with all of this clutter that it's difficult in other data structures to go and correct. I'm going to go and correct it to there. I'm going to go and correct it to here. By the way, let me go and tell you that right now, I can see that that was supposed to be a 25-foot radius on here. So if I've got the endpoint curve on here, I can actually put the endpoint in, and then I can I can type in R and it will open up and say, how big is that radius supposed to be? And it will go and put a 25-foot radius in there. So if I know these values, I can go and input them as I'm going through and building this. And then when I go through the rest of this process, go in building it out, unselecting all of this, selecting all of this and this, making sure I just have what I wanted to go and correct, which by the way, I turned off those other things. So it's going to still appear there, but live demo. Go ahead and do that and tell it to go and build this out, and it will go and build it now. In this case, because I didn't do anything with historic or the conveyance divisions or the simultaneous conveyance, it rebuilt them again. So I will want to go and turn these all on and correct these all at the same time, including historic on here. All right, so now let's do this one more time and correct these all.
Frank Mark has a question in the chat.
All right. So go ahead, Mark. How did it get an R equals 25 when it was 620 or 925? Did I actually go and input 925 on there, Mark?
No, the parcels along the street to the left, now it says radius 25, where it previously was radius 925 or so.
Interesting. Thank you for checking that. Let's see if that's. So the tax lines, you're right. When I input that, it stored that with all of them. Interesting, because I thought that I was only doing this one, but it actually had used that for all of those points in there. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, obviously that's a little bug you want to watch out for. That if you're going to use that 25 trick, that's only on one curve. You can't do that if you have multiple curves selected. By the way, you can also tell that this is not a scripted demo. This is live, so that you can see the issues there. All right. So we should not have any other lines in here. There's a line here. And then we can tell it to go ahead and build this extent again. And let's make sure we select those lines and tell them to go and update the COGO on them. What is this line here? This is a tax line. That must be, I mean, it's a huge tax line. Huh, interesting. So when I was doing that demo, I must have corrupted another line in there. And that's not the one I corrupted, but that is another one. So obviously when I was not paying attention, I changed the radius to 25 for everything. I also went and corrupted that one line in there. That's why it's good to have undo. For all of this. Or in this case, I'll just discard all my changes on here. Let's see if this was actually me or if this was actually stored in there that they had. Nope, it was something that I did. Sorry. All right. Do we have other questions in here? Do we have anything that, as far as the parcel fabric, anybody wants to talk about, anyone wants to ask?
Yeah, if we're done doing beginner stuff.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Well, then I had a problem where I moved a section because it was off one line, and it really messed things up. And I have another subdivision I noticed the other day that I didn't move anything on it, but if you look at it on the screen, you'll have, let me turn this on. You'll have one line that looks like here, then one line that looks like is right there, and then the next line looks like it's back up here again. It looks like it's zigzagging.
Let's
and it's a
see.
straight line. When I put it in, it was a straight line. I can tell you that.
Let's see if we can identify this, because this is something you want to be aware of.
I'm getting
and-
trust issues with this thing.
So Tori and I had talked about this. I create a line. All right. I create a line in here. All right. Let's create a single line in here. And let me first sort of explain what might happen with this. So the thing that we think that we are seeing is that on all ArcGIS, and matter of fact, all Esri products, there is an element. Let's go back here. There's an element that inside of here, there is a setting called go down here. There's a resolution setting. All right. And the resolution setting in this case is 3/1000 of a foot. All right. On this data set. And that's set as part of the actual spatial reference of your feature data set. And what happens is that means that there is a point every 3/1000 of a foot away. So it actually has a little grid on it. All right. And when you draw a line, when you go to draw a line in here, what will happen is it will start on the closest 3/1000, and then it will end on the closest 3/1000 of a foot, that precision resolution on here. So what happens though, when you come in and you tell it to go and split that line here, what happens is it goes and finds the ends of those lines and snaps them to the closest point. So that might snap here, this might snap here. And again, this is 3/1000ths of a foot. And it winds up where, depending upon where your edit is, where your divide is, it winds up snapping it to these other places. All right. And we think that that's actually what's happening. So if I go in here and do if I have an existing line that I go in here and just split, all right, here, there are certain splits, all right, that if I go in here, and this especially happens with curves, that when I zoom in close enough, almost microscopically, I can see that these 2 points do not go, and they are not equal to the same point. Now that's not a big deal unless it turns out that, let's go in here and create some other lines. Unless it turns out that these are supposed to be parts of a parcel, in which case you draw the long line in, you divide it up, and then you go to connect up, and there's actually 2 points there that you have to go and create. And then when it goes to create seeds, which is a way for it to determine whether or not these lines are all connected, it doesn't connect up. And let me take it on a macro level and show you that, where let's delete that seed. Let's take this line and then just go and edit this line and edit the vertex on it. And we only want this line. And just sort of demonstrate, just move it over. When we go to create a seed, it analyzes the lines that are part of our current record. These, by the way, these lines get automatically associated with this record by using the global ID of this record. And we go to create parcels. It will not create a parcel because it will not show you where there's a disconnect on the line. There is a disconnect on the line somewhere, but it won't show you where that disconnect is. And you then have to go through and find where that disconnect is and take that line and go and extend it, and or edit the vertex and snap it back to where it should be, and then tell it to build your seeds again, and it will build it. So a challenging part is first that question when you go to build it, because you've drawn the line and you split them, and this is all normal procedures that you would have done. If it turns out that it's right on that one specific part of that grid, and it snaps to 2 different points on that precision grid, it will not create a seed. And how do you know that? You don't. There's no indication on it. You literally have to go in there and zoom in microscopically until you find where there's a gap on there. Then you can test it and say, okay, now it will go and create a seed, and then we can create and build the parcels from that point. But I share your frustration, Tori, because we were using that same process when we go to build this. And it would not go and allow us to go and build them. And this was sort of old school. You go and you create your road right away, right? Let's just go and do this, but we'll do this as and this is especially problematic when you go with a curve and you divide that curve up and divide that up into, 15 different ones. And if you go in here, again, we could have done this just by going and trying to make seeds out of all these. But when we zoom in here and look at these may not all be connected to one another as you go through here. I can tell you how it happens, but how do you fix it? That's a little bit more problematic because visually it looks like it's the same, but it really is not the same. And how, especially with the symbology, you can't. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
Look
wow.
at that.
Oh, God.
And what we can say is that, and Mark gave us a really good suggestion. I don't know if that's going to fix it, Mark, just to let you know. But Mark's suggestion is maybe what we do is we do an align features here, all right? In which we go and say here to here and snap it to here and do that. But the problem with it is, and I don't remember which one I actually went into, is that it will go in here, but there's no guarantee that those 2 points will snap together on this. Does anybody remember which one I went into?
No, it was one of those first couple.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Mark, that's not a bad suggestion at all. And it might be that it actually, have you used that technique, Mark? And have you encountered this problem? It might be that that's a solution, Tori. Nope, just guessing.
My other thoughts were going back to creating coordinates for every point in the subdivision. And
well, one of the things that I know Chris did with us is that when we went and did this, rather than building a one straight line and then splitting it out, often he will build the lots using the information that's shown on a subdivision plat. The problem with that is that there's rounding errors associated with that if you have a long curvilinear road, by the time you get to the end, you might be 2-3 feet off because of the little rounding errors that occur.
Yep.
So for right now, I would say, okay, you've got 2 suggestions. One is build the smaller ones. And then as you're doing that, make sure that if you're doing it within a traverse, you close the traverse out on where you think it's supposed to be at the end. Or let's try Mark's solution on this. And that maybe if you go and you have that issue, you do an align features to pull them all together and hope that it still works. But you're right, it is a frustrating part, but it's something that believe it or not, it's not just the parcel fabric. It is part of the actual structural component of ArcMap. It just happens that the parcel fabric points it out because they're looking at a much finer, almost a microscopic level when they go and build this thing out.
Can you, say your first segment down there is lot 1,
right?
Can you build lot 1, not build parcels or create seeds, and then build lot 2? Can you then align those 2 and then go to lot 3 and align it with 2? And
sure, I don't see any reason why you couldn't. Let me go and make this so that it
I mean, I don't know if it'll help, but that was just a thought. Align every single one while you're building it.
Yeah, I agree. Let's let's see if we can demonstrate this. And let's go back to here and then just go here. Tell it to create seeds. And again, create seeds and align features. Really, align features you can do on both lines and polygons in here. So it's not just, you don't have to wait for a certain time to do it. You can do that anytime you want. Build only goes and works and takes the seeds and expands them on there. I mean, that's a reasonable solution, is to go and see if that works any better. Because you're right, it is one of these things where you want to try to use the most efficient workflow, and that is not building them individually, but going and doing it all at once, using the tools for parallel, for offsets, for those sorts of things, and then reduce them or divide them up according to whatever your subdivision plat is saying. Something you can report back the next time, whether this was more successful. All right. Thank you, though. Thanks for asking that question. I think it needs to be known a little bit more. But again, recognize it's not necessarily a deficiency of the fabric as much as it's the fact that the fabric points out this real problem with lots of software that's graphic software, and what we're using for the individual resolution of here, and how quickly or how closely it's actually approximating where these things are. All right.
Yeah, and the drawing is approximate. I get that. Is the underlying data is what, and it's just a visual representation thereof. It could be affected by your video card, you know.
Right. And it used to be, that's what we used to have issues with. And we used to go and actually see it where it would go to draw a line which was not horizontal or vertical, and you would wind up with stair stepping on there. It would get to the closest pixel in there, and it's sort of analogous to what it's doing here on this. So yeah, I would look at that and see if that that helps you at all in there. All right. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Mark. If there's nothing else, I'm going to go and end this and stop recording. Thank you all for participating. We should have asked questions a little bit sooner, but thanks. Hopefully it helped you. Hopefully it will give you something to think about, and we'll go from there. Thanks. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.